Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Storm of the Century Episode 1 review. So, I, of course, have been wanting to cover Storm of the Century for a very long time. Because, of course, years ago, I had watched, like, the very last episode of this, and I really enjoyed it, and I was like, okay, hopefully at some point that this show just somehow miraculously comes available for people to see because I want to cover it anyways. And once today it dropped on Hulu, I was like, heck yeah, HULU. Um, I of course was to be like, let's cover this now. Let's go into it. So this show, of course, was adapted from a Stephen King book, and so uh, yeah, I've also, of course, covered a bunch of Stephen King movies. You can check all that out. There's a whole playlist that lists that. Um, but yeah, so what is Storm of the Century about? So we have the beginning of this narrated by Constable Mike Anderson, who, of course, is Tim Daly. You'll probably have known him from a show called Wings, or maybe you might recognize him as the voice of Superman. And it's kind of funny because in the first episode we reference Superman in this episode, which is kind of funny. So Mike goes on to kind of give us this feeling that the town that he's in Maine is a fairly small town where nothing really happens. And so we all of a sudden start to realize that things are starting to unusually happen within this town. And we are to, of course, uh, be going on and experiencing this with the people of this town. So come to find out, not only is this town to have a horrible storm, um, where they're kind of dubbing this to uh, possibly be the end of the world as we know it, oddly just for a town, but the also unusual thing is that we have a murder in this town also. A murder, of course, where the person who is to go on and kill this woman named Martha is to just wait in the house, sit in this chair, and just kind of watch TV. And every once in a while, when a person in this town is to arrive to see that this has legitimately happened, that a murder has occurred, we then go on and have Andre, who is to be this murderer, is to know who everyone in this town is, even though they've never seen this guy in their life. And at some point, we have Andre, who is to know specific things about them that they are to all of a sudden be godsmacked about, that this guy is to know secrets about them, personal things. So yeah, I really thought that this show was so um interesting, and I'm so glad that I have the opportunity to be able to talk about this. So uh within the first episode we kind of quickly explain it, and then I'll get into spoilers. We have a uh we have Martha who is to die, and then all of a sudden we start to have like one random kid who ends up coming into the house and is to realize this woman dies, and then he runs off to the people in the town to tell them that this woman is dead. We then have a person of the community who is to be town manager Robbie Beals, who then makes his way to check on whether or not this person is dead or not. And then we go on to have Robbie, who then calls Mike Anderson, who is to be the constable or the sheriff, and is to like in desperation want him to make his way to this house to then arrest this man, this murderer who is still in the house, as well as going on and at some point in this first episode, uh, like take all these pictures of all this evidence, and is to also have Mike uh, arrest this man and put him in some cell that is also combined with this grocery store. So like uh that is so unusual, and uh but I also thought it was so interesting that we have a guy who is to not only be a sheriff but then is also work at this grocery store. Because I guess with a small town like this, like I guess Mike can just go on and just like with nothing he has to really do as far as a sheriff is concerned, like he can go on and just um like have a 9 to 5 grocery job, and that's kind of interesting. So with that said, I think it's about that time to just go into spoilers, and we'll go more in depth about this first episode. Let me know in the comments below how you feel about Storm of the Century, whether you like this show, whether you hate this show, whether you have mixed feelings about it because you're just like, man, I'm not quite sure about this first episode quite yet. Like, it feels like they didn't give me enough. And so I want to go on and check out other episodes, and then at some point I'll get there. So, that said, let's double fire this bad boy up. Let's just go on into what is spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time again to spoil this first episode. So we, of course, have Mike Anderson go on and tell us at the beginning of this narration that he, of course, was to grow up in Maine, but he was to never really live in Maine. Um, and so that seems to be like fairly usual for the people that have lived in this town. And so the first thing we see is a number of fishermen that are all talking about the weather, and so and they're all kind of talking about like what they should do or and stuff along those lines. So we have, of course, Mike that goes on and is to mention about Martha Clarendon, who is to come to meet a guy named Andre. And for Martha, this will be the last person that Martha ever sees, telling us that Andre will go on and kill this woman. So we, of course, have a ding dong at the doorbell, and so Martha is to, of course, be watching TV, and she tries to get on her little thing to help her walk, and this little walker thing. And so Martha is mentioning how like she's old now and she has problems getting around because she was to injure her hip, so on and so forth. So Martha is trying to get to the door, but she's slow as molasses. So when she does open the door, we have Andre, who, of course, is to usually mutter 2 phrases: "Born in sin," or "Born in sin, come on in," or "Born in lust, turn dust." And so for Martha, it seems that we have Andre, who is to say "Born in lust, turn to dust," and so saying that this woman is going to have to get killed by Andre here. So after Andre is to kill this woman and have her in the house, we have Andre that is to sit by the TV and just kind of wait. We all of a sudden have Davy, who is to kind of hear a noise, and he's outside just kind of playing with his basketball. And so he decides, because he hears a noise, to make his way into this home and ask if anybody's inside. So Davy starts poking around and is to go into one part of this house and realize that the Martha woman is now dead. And we then have Andre, who is to tell Davy that he should give up on his basketball dreams because he'll never amount to anything. And so Davy, of course, who is to kind of drop this basketball near Andre and then run off, because Davy had been scared by this guy. We have Andre that uses his finger to get the basketball near him, and so Andre takes the basketball and pushes it, or kind of like tosses it so hard that it breaks the TV. And all of a sudden we then have Andre, who is to regain uh, the basketball and turn the TV back on. And so the TV is still working, even though it's heavily broken. And so we're getting like bits and pieces of what's going on in the TV. So we have Davy, who's running into town, telling everyone that Clarendon is dead, Clarendon is dead. And they're like, hey kid, what are you talking about? And so a number of people are all stopped by Davy, and Davy ends up telling them that this woman is dead. So we then have the town manager, Robbie Beals, who is like, well, like, considering I'm the town manager, I feel like I need to confirm this, and then I'll turn around and I'll call Constable Mike Anderson. So Constable Mike Anderson is to, of course, get everybody's um, specific meat orders, as he is to start handing things out to people and telling everybody, like, hey, like, everybody keep calm. Like, yeah, I get it that this is a horrible storm, but like you guys should not be kind of running wild in this grocery store. Just kind of keep calm. So we have Mike that is to all of a sudden get a call uh, from Molly, who is to let Mike know that she is having a problem with one of the girls who is actually Pippa. And Pippa, I guess, is to be the the daughter of a guy named Hatch. So that's his nickname. So immediately, as we of course have Molly calling, it spreads quickly throughout this grocery store. It's like, well, hey, like, something's wrong with Pippa, and Mike is like, yeah, but I'm assuming it's nothing. So Mike and Hatch go on to make their way to Molly's place, where she is supervising over all of these kids. And it seems that Pippa is to just get stuck in this like stairwell. Like, she ends up getting stuck in one of the kind of gaps uh, of the railing. So we have this girl that is getting stuck. Everybody's just kind of making fun of her and talking about, like, well, hey, like, when are we gonna feed her? Because, like, we're all starting to get hungry right now. So we start to have a number of jokes going around. We have certain kids that are starting to get rowdy and whatever. So Mike gets there and is to go on and see that Pippa Pippa is stuck. So Mike tries to comfort this girl as it seems that she's to realize, like, yeah, I could easily stick my head in here, but then I realized I couldn't stick my head back out. So Mike is like, well, hey, like, Pippa, like, here's one thing that you don't realize is that everybody has a smaller button that I can just kind of touch you in a certain part of your head, and like your head will just become smaller. And so Mike goes on and touches this girl on the nose and then pushes her back, and all of a sudden her head comes out of the little gap, and Mike is to go on and save the day. So we then turn around and, of course, uh, have Mike that is away. And so we have Robbie that goes on to get to Martha's home. And so he ends up realizing that, of course, Martha is dead in her home and is to also spot Andre, Linoge or Linage, that I'm assuming it's Linoge, that is to just be parked in this chair. And we all of a sudden have Andre who is starting to talk to Robbie and mention how Robbie decided to sleep with some prostitute instead of uh, visiting a family member in the hospital, and that family member had died. And come to find out, this family member is now be a cannibal, and when Robbie dies, he's gonna go to hell, the same place where this relative is, and this relative is going to consume Robbie over and over and over again because uh, hell is repetition. So Robbie is like, oh my god, like this guy is freaking insane, but just awful. So Robbie is to then uh, run to his car, get his gun out, and is to call on the radio to try and get Mike. And instead, there's to be another one who kind of responds here, and it's like, I don't want you, I want Mike. Like, I want Mike to know what's going on here, that I'm keeping this murderer at bay. So Mike then finally does get the radio, and he's just like, well, okay, like, we're gonna make our way down there. So Mike ends up opening up this drawer where he has these cuffs and he has this gun. Because again, small town where I guess crime rarely ever happens. So we also have Hatch who's with Mike, and Hatch ends up getting the shotgun, but at some point they have to realize to take the safety off. So Mike is to make it to this home and is to ask Robbie what it all happened. So everything that I've already kind of said is what Robbie says, so I'm not going to repeat it. So we have Robbie that is to be holding this gun up, and it's just like, hey, like, I'm coming prepared. And Mike is like, put that gun away. Like, that gun is loaded, and like, I don't want it going off, so like, put that gun away. And Robbie's like, no, like, I'm defending myself. So Mike is like, okay, we're just gonna go in there, and like, we're gonna see what's what. And we of course have Hatch who's going on and saying like, well, like, it's surprising that this guy hasn't left by now. This guy didn't decide to just go through the back door and just leave. Um, for how long this all took. So they go into the room that Andre is in, and they weirdly heard the TV, but they realize that the TV is bashed in. So they're like, okay, like, did did we actually hear the TV? Because it wouldn't make sense. The TV like shouldn't be working that well. And so we also had Stephen King that was on the TV also as I think some attorney um, for some kind of excuse me, for some kind of infomercial. So Mike, of course, has Hatch with a shotgun and is to put the cuffs on Andre and ask what his name is. So Andre is to tell Mike that it's like, well, you know what? If Hatch is to have this shotgun and is to shoot, like he's not only going to kill me, but he's going to kill you. And also, like, Hatch isn't going to kill anyone because the safety is still on. And so Hatch ends up taking off the safety. And so they're like, oh, okay, all right. Like, oddly, this guy knows a lot. Um, he not only knows, like, everybody in town's name, and they thought that that was very unusual. And so they end up putting this guy into the like basically the trunk of their vehicle because they couldn't justify putting him in the back seat or Hatch would have to sit next to him and kind of watch him. So they're like, no, we'll just put him in the trunk. So we have Mike talking to Robbie about like how is it that this guy like knows everything about us, and Robbie's like, I have no clue. Like this guy is just insane. I'm very baffled about this guy. So they bring Andre to the back of this grocery store that is to have a cell and like a desk and things. So they try to open like this back room up, and for whatever they try to do, this door does not open. Hatch is to try to open this door with his key, and the key breaks. So we have Hatch that goes all the way around to the front of the store to go in the back, try to open this door, and the door won't open. So no matter what they do, like there's guys that are trying to muscle it and try to get it open, and nothing works. So now we have to have Hatch go all the way back to the front, to the back of the store, to go on with Mike and Andre to then get Andre to go through the store while a bunch of people are all kind of looking on and asking. It's like, well, hey, why did this guy kill this one? So, because come to find out, a guy named uh, uh, Gods Godso Godso is asking. So, and this guy is to own this kind of business near the pier, and it seems that that ends up getting destroyed by the end of this first episode. So we have Andre that ends up going through the first part of the store, and we have Andre who starts rattling off certain information about certain people, like the Godso guy, Peter. We have Andre that is to mention that this guy is to not only have a certain fish business, but he also has a weed business also. It's like, like, so the guy starts to factor in, like, how much money is he making off to the side with this weed business. And so then also, we have Andre who is uh, to mention to a girl named Katrina that she is going on and sleeping with Billy, and Katrina is to be pregnant and is thinking about having an abortion. And so Billy gets really upset and grabs onto Andre. It's like, well, hey, how did you know that information, mister? And so Andre doesn't hurt this guy, but when Billy is to kind of fall off to the side, he all of a sudden has his nose start bleeding, and Andre is to call it before it even happens. And also, Andre is to mention that Billy was to be having an affair on Katrina during a certain part of the year when it would become hot. It seems that there is to be uh, Kirk's sister, Kirk Freeman's sister, who is to not only ride horses but is to ride Billy during the summertime. And so Kirk is to be upset that it seems like he had found out this information about his sister. So, but not only that, we also had uh, Katrina, who is calling Molly to let her know that there is a murderer that they are bringing into the grocery store. And Molly's asking Katrina, it's like, is this a joke? Like, we rarely ever have murderers in this town. Like, and Katrina's like, no, it's no joke. It's no hoax. It's legit. So Molly is to want to come into the store to try and talk to Mike. Um, and that leads also to Andre spotting Mike's son as Mike's son is to go on and grab this thing of cereal, and then he is to run to the front of the store and he bumps into Andre, and Andre ends up picking up Mike's son and is to have Mike's son have this kind of injury or this kind of wound on his nose, and so Andre is to say to this kid, it's like, oh, it's just a fairy saddle or something like that. Um, Bizarrely, the same thing that Mike's father used to tell him all the time. And Mike is just like, how is it that this guy just knows all of this? He knows everything. So Mike or Andre is to just let this kid go after talking to him, and then we have Mike who gets very upset after Andre is to be brought back to the back and is to be searched and taken these bloody gloves and taken, of course, Andre's cap off, and is to be searching for this guy's wallet, and he has nothing on him. He has no credit card, he has no ID, he has nothing. And so Mike gets very upset at this point because this guy had touched his son, and also that they know nothing about this guy. Like, this guy just came out of nowhere. And so they go on and they put this guy in the cell, and Mike is to ask a number of volunteers to watch over Andre for X number of hours. So the first guys who are to go on and do this, of course, are Hatch and Godso. So we have Mike that is to talk to Ursula about how they're doing as far as supplies for this uh, this kind of community area where they can kind of house a number of people and for when the weather gets really bad. And so we have Mike asking Ursula, it's like, well, like, how well prepared are you guys? And Ursula's like, we've been preparing for this for a while. Uh, like we have like a bunch of supplies. Like this is all like overly planned. And Mike is like, okay, great. So I don't have to worry about all this. As we go on, we have Mike who is to talk to Hatch, and Hatch is to thank Mike for helping out his daughter, while Hatch is, of course, reading this brochure, preparing himself for this emergency, kind of telling us like how like rare these things possibly occur in Maine. So, and they're also like narrowing it down of like the big blow is what they call the weather that happened in Maine, and so on and so forth. So, and they're saying like the year that this is to have happened, this horrible storm. So we also have Mike that goes on to Martha's house and is to start to take pictures and keep evidence of everything that was to happen in this home, as we had Hatch that didn't want to close the door because he of course is like, well, hey, like if we close the door, does that ruin the crime scene? And Mike tells Hatch, it's like, well, if you don't close this door, then there's going to be a bunch of snow that's going to come into this woman's house, and so that'll ruin the crime scene anyways. So Mike ends up coming in, and he ends up also collecting this woman's walker, and he ends up looking at Martha's body, and he ends up saying words like "I'm sorry, old girl," like as if she is. It sounds like he's talking to some horse when he's talking to some woman, and that seems very odd. So, but interestingly enough, we have Mike, who is to look at this wall, and the wall ends up stating, "Give me what I want, and like I'll leave, like I'll let you go, or you'll never see me again." So, and we have Andre that was telling Mike, it's like, well, hey, like at some point we're gonna have a conversation with one another, and so Mike is, when they're at the prison, telling Andre, it's like, well, hey, when I get back, we're going to have that conversation. So Mike takes all these pictures, and so we have guys like Ferd Andrews, who is looking at this pier and realizing how bad this storm is getting, and is saying that like things that you wouldn't think is happening is all of a sudden happening, and Ferd is to be this firefighter. So we have Hatch and we have Godso that are watching over Andrew. And so we have Godso who is watching over Andrew, and it seems that he is starting to get very, very tired, like unusually tired. And so Hatchet is talking about this like word game that he's doing on the computer, and so at some point Hatch is to say, it's like, well, hey, like what could be this answer, and Godso is to come up with the answer. And so Hatch is just like, well, hey, here, like maybe you can play this game later to just kind of keep you awake. So Hatch goes on to get some kind of water or some kind of pop or something, or soda, and Hatch leaves, and Peter is to go into this trance, kind of like Andre is also doing, where he's muttering these incantations over and over and over again. So we have Gato at some point who is to get this rope to create this noose, and is to have a piece of paper on his body that says, like, give me what I want, give me what I want, give me what I want, tons and tons of times over. So as this guy is going to hang himself uncontrollably, while that is also going on, we have this firefighter that of course is to be Lloyd Wishman, who is not paying attention to the other firefighter mentioning how like things that are to be a thing that you wouldn't think is happening as far as the weather is concerned. And Lloyd is painting on the firefighter truck, "Give me what I want, uh, and then I'll go." Kind of like I know the first thing, but I don't know what the second sentence is, but it repeats consistently. So Lloyd, after painting that on his truck, is to then take this axe and is to basically ram his head into it and kill himself. And uh, Ferd, who then goes back into the firehouse, to notice that this other firefighter is dead. So, while that is also going on, we have Jack Carver with his family, and Jack is mentioning that's like, well, hey, I'm going to have to go on and take this shift to pitch in to kind of watch over this guy. If something ends up happening as far as weather goes, just kind of go where everybody else is going, and like I'll meet with you guys there because I'll only be watching over this guy for a short number of hours. So they're like, okay, like that sounds fine. So because Mrs. Carver goes on and picks up her kids at Molly's place because Molly used to kind of call all the families to say like, hey, like because of the weather, like I'm calling this early for everybody to come and pick up their kids. So everybody does go on and do that. So as well as Molly's making her way to the grocery store to try to talk to Mike. So we, I think, have that pretty much cover most of this episode. There might have been some tail end things that I probably forgot about, but I think most of that is covered. So, with that said, let me know in the comments below if there's something that I did forget about, because I'm sure that there probably is. Uh, but yeah, other than that, I think I feel good enough about just calling this one a episode 1 review, because I'm like I feel like I want to say it's like, but there's one more thing that I forgot about. Um, no, I think that's it. So, yeah, goodbye everybody. Goodbye everybody. I always second guess myself, so I just kind of want to leave this like short gap to think if there's anything left. Um, yeah. So goodbye everybody. Goodbye everybody. Figures as soon as I would stop recording, there'd be something that came up. There's a whole thing with Ursula and the town manager where everybody's starting to flood in, and everybody's realizing that they should probably call for the siren because weather is getting horribly bad. So Ursula is talking to Robbie, the town manager, and saying like, "Well, hey, like it's interesting to kind of see you pitch in for something in this town." And so on and so forth, kind of making the joke of how lazy this guy is. But so Ursula is to realize how bad the weather is getting, to where they should sign the alarms to get everybody uh, to get where Ursula and these people are already at. Ursula is telling everyone to sign in, so that way they can be aware of how many people are here, so they know how many beds they have left to still be able to give people. So I covered all that, and then we also had Andre, who's in his cell, and we have his cane. If I barely mentioned that, where Andre had his bloody cane that was to be seen kind of very bloody when he went on and killed that woman, and a number of people started to show up at that house with this murderer. We then go on and have the cane later on in the episode that is starting to uh, kind of have a life of its own, where it's starting to move and shift and crawl around, um, as we start to realize that uh, that of course uh, we go on to have Godso, who is to kill himself off by hanging himself. So, with that said, I think I'm just going to go on and try to get out of here now, because I think that's all that I had left to say. So, bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.